Hi, today we will explain the storyline of the movie Family Practice, which was released in 2018. Okay, let's get straight to the story. Simon has not seen his parents for 6 months. Soon, Simon's father, Carl, who is a psychiatrist, will be celebrating his 60th birthday. Simon's girlfriend, Fabienne, is curious about Simon's family and agrees to come with him to Carl's birthday party. When they arrived, Carl's mother, Agnes, welcomed them warmly, and soon Simon was trying to mingle with the guests and his relatives. It was revealed that Simon was now a comic book artist, having been selected as a finalist in a famous comic book festival. After eating, Simon went to his mother in the kitchen to help prepare the next course. There, Agnes asked if Fabienne didn't mind if Simon came home occasionally, because his mother was worried about Simon's finances, but they tried to provide enough. Simon also admitted that he didn't make much money, but the money from his parents was enough. Agnes also suggested that Simon help transcribe the manuscript of Carl's book to be published. The book was planned to be finished in 2 months, but Simon didn't feel like he could do it considering he also had an art project with Fabienne that would be exhibited in a gallery. At the party, Simon saw a woman he had never seen before, and it turned out to be Sonia, Carl's new 40-year-old secretary. Long story short, it was time for Carl to blow out his birthday candles, but not long after, Agnes suddenly fainted in the kitchen. Thankfully, it was just poor circulation, and Agnes had been experiencing it lately, so she asked Simon not to worry too much about her. The next day, while discussing work with Fabienne, Agnes came to the gallery, saying she needed to talk to Simon alone. Outside, Agnes said that she had spoken to Carl, and they had agreed to pay him 50 francs an hour to do transcriptions. However, Simon seemed reluctant about his parents' decision. He said he didn't have time to work on it, plus the exhibition would open in 3 weeks. Agnes finally persuaded Simon to accept the offer. This was because Carl was known to have relationships with more than one woman, and Agnes said that she and Carl needed time together. If Simon doesn't want to accept it, she will have to do it, and Carl will go on vacation with Sonia. And at the moment, Carl is very close to Sonia. In fact, Carl dares to bring Sonia to his house and to Shabbat events, whereas Carl's father never dared to bring his mistress to public places before. Simon had no choice but to accept the offer to work on the book transcription, so he asked Fabienne, his co-worker, for permission. Fabienne offered a replacement while Simon worked on the project, but Simon said there was no need. He was confident he could do his part because it would only take him a week. Arriving at the practice, Carl explained the work he needed to do while working on the manuscript. He said it was an easy job, and Simon's only task was to type the transcript in the order of the numbers he had marked. Carl had also prepared the manuscript documents that Simon would use, copies of the lecture materials he had given, question and answer sessions, interviews, and VHS tapes. Seeing the number of documents that had to be processed, Simon felt he needed a month or 2 to 3 weeks if he was very focused. Carl instructed Sonia to come 3 times a week. Simon said he couldn't let Fabienne wait for a month considering they had a joint project. For that, Carl gave him tips so that he could work faster, namely to prioritize the VHS recordings, then Sonia would do the rest. Here, Carl asked Simon what his impression of Sonia was. He then said they had a special relationship, which Simon already knew. Carl felt like he was 30 again when he was with her. In other words, Carl seemed crazy about Sonia. After that, Carl asked a glimpse of Simon's relationship with Fabienne, just to make sure they were serious. Carl said he was very happy that Simon could help transcribe the manuscript now, because he was sure Simon would do a very good job. After that, he told Simon to give the manuscript he had worked on to Sonia, so she could reread the transcript. Carl also gave him a flash drive that would store the transcribed manuscript. In addition, Carl also advised that if the publisher or organizer called, just give them his cell phone number. After that, Simon drove his parents, who were going on vacation. Agnes told Simon to contact her if he had any questions regarding the book draft. She also told Simon to forbid Sonia from entering their apartment. That night, Simon went to attend a comic festival with Fabienne, but he felt pessimistic about being a winner. Even if he won, the committee should have told him at the beginning. Sure enough, Simon did not come out as the winner of the comic competition, but Fabienne encouraged him not to be discouraged. The next day, Simon started working on the transcription. During the afternoon, while resting on the terrace, Sonia approached Simon and invited him to chat. Without further ado, Sonia asked Simon about the payment he would receive later. She hoped the money would be enough for Simon because she knew he was having financial problems. That was also the reason why he couldn't go on vacation with Carl. Hearing this, Simon said that there was nothing to expect from the vacation. Simon worked on the transcription until late at night, and then he worked on his comic project. The next day, Carl called to ask about the situation at the office. Carl also said that Sonia had spoken to Simon the day before, mentioning his past relationships and his frequent changes of partners. Carl asked him not to mention the matter to Sonia at all. He himself had already mentioned it to Sonia. But Sonia was much more fragile than Simon thought, so he asked Simon not to say anything else. After the phone call, Simon continued with his work. During the day, a doctor named Jean Graff came to check the patient's report for the health insurance company. Shortly afterwards, a young woman arrived who wanted to arrange a schedule for psychiatric group therapy with Carl. Simon told her to see Sonia because it was Sonia's business. Just then, Sonia appeared, saying that Carl's schedule was full. The woman said she already knew, but Carl had told her to sign up a week ago. Sonia didn't mind showing Carl's fully booked schedule, but the young woman chose to leave. Before summarizing the day's work, Simon went to Sonia's room to ask for a flash disk that would store the transcript text, but Sonia forgot where she'd put it. On the other hand, she was annoyed that Carl had to tell her to check the text because she felt tired, and Sonia ended up crying. Simon tried to comfort her, but Sonia felt comfortable in Simon's arms and kissed him instead. This incident made Simon feel awkward and felt he had to discuss it again tomorrow. As it turned out, Sonia told Carl about it and asked him not to discuss it again. After that, Sonia and Graff were going to have lunch, and she told Simon not to forget to rest. Shortly afterwards, there was a delivery of flowers for Sonia, but since she was not there, Simon was forced to accept the flowers for her. It turned out that the flowers were from his own father to appreciate Sonia's patience all this time, but Simon threw the flowers away instead. Then he went home early. After that, he called Fabienne and invited her to lunch. On the way, he saw Fabienne having lunch with Max, her new co-worker who would replace Simon on the art project. After a brief conversation, Simon decided to go back to work and not go home early. At the office, Sonia confronted him about the roses. She knew Simon had received them, but Simon pretended not to know. Seeing Simon's attitude, Sonia finally complained to Carl. Simon also knew that Sonia would report him to Carl, so he picked up the phone and eavesdropped on their conversation. Sure enough, they were talking about Simon's psychological state, which they thought was childish. However, Simon felt a little shaken because Carl judged Simon's drawings as if he were a 5-year-old boy trying to treat his trauma. But even so, Simon was fairly successful in living his life well. While eavesdropping, there was suddenly a sound from his computer, and Sonia automatically knew that Simon was listening to their conversation. He decided to end his work and go home, but before leaving, he had the opportunity to intimidate Sonia. Arriving at the gallery, he saw Fabienne discussing the project with the newest team member. Simon went to the kitchen and received a call from Carl. Carl was trying to get an explanation because Sonia had told him Simon wanted to quit the project, but he didn't know the exact reason why. Carl guessed it was because of Fabienne, but he was wrong. Agnes overheard Carl talking to Simon, so Carl couldn't help but tell her that Simon wanted to quit. Agnes threatened to go home if Simon really didn't want to continue. She was disappointed in Simon because this was the first time she had asked for his help, but Simon immediately disappointed her. In the end, Simon decided to go back to working on the transcript, considering that Fabienne had found a replacement for him on the project. Fabienne was forced to do so because their art project had to launch in the next 2 weeks. Long story short, Simon ended up leaving Fabienne and returning to Carl's office, but instead got involved in a brief relationship with Sonia, who was feeling vulnerable. The next day, Simon joined Fabienne and the project team at the gallery to have fun at the bar on Friday night. Here, Simon felt very anxious about having betrayed Fabienne. And finally, he chose to be honest with Fabienne. Fabienne suddenly avoided Simon, but Simon asked her to talk about it. Fabienne didn't know what to say, she just asked how their relationship would be in the future. Because Simon couldn't answer the question, Fabienne left him completely. In the end, Simon spent the night alone at the bar and sent a chat to Sonia. Sonia immediately replied to the chat and asked why Simon didn't get together with his friends on Friday night. Simon said he didn't go out on holidays. Sonia then teased him and told him to come and spend time with her. Finally, Simon went for a bike ride at night to find Sonia's place, and shortly after they had dinner together. The next morning, Simon didn't see Sonia, but it turned out that she had gone to the supermarket to buy groceries. Suddenly, Carl came over, and they were both surprised. Carl claimed he just wanted to pick something up. Simon suddenly asked what his father was doing there. He said it was actually his apartment. Here, Carl also said that Sonia wanted to have his children, and that was the problem all this time. Soon after, Sonia came home. Awkwardly, they spoke as necessary. Carl asked Simon to talk to his mother. Shortly thereafter, Simon, who was annoyed, hurried to get ready to go home. Surprisingly, he heard ringing in his ear, all the way from Sonia's apartment to Carl's office. Simon then called his mother, just as she and Carl were arguing. Sonia threatened to commit suicide, and Carl said that Sonia had always had a tendency to end her life. Simon didn't know anything about it, so Carl would go help Sonia. Meanwhile, Agnes was not willing to let him go, but Carl could be held accountable if Sonia was really desperate. Agnes had no choice but to let Carl go. Simon heard it all over the phone. He hurried home to talk to his mother. However, he saw that his mother was devastated, and Agnes asked them to keep their distance. Simon felt confused because he had come home for his mother, but Agnes only felt worried about him sometimes. Not that she was expecting Simon to come, so she let Simon go. Simon then returned to Fabienne's gallery. At that moment, Fabienne was busy preparing the artwork that would be exhibited. Simon tried to apologize and begged to be able to talk to her, but Fabienne refused to see Simon again. She tried to tell Simon to leave, but Simon kept trying to explain to Fabienne that his affair with Sonia was nothing, and just a mistake. He even accused Fabienne of cheating on him with Max, but of course that wasn't true. Finally, Simon really left after being kicked out by Fabienne. Simon returned to Carl's office where he felt so confused and distraught that he fainted, and the ringing in his ears reappeared. He later woke up in the hospital where Carl came to see him. He felt guilty for not being able to come sooner, but the nurse said that his mother had already visited. Simon then asked about his mother's health and other questions. Carl then poured out his heart that Sonia also needed him, so he couldn't always be with Agnes. He also asked Simon to persuade his mother to understand because he knew Agnes listened to Simon. Even though he couldn't choose between Sonia and Agnes, Carl said Agnes would always be number one for him, because after all, she was the mother of his child. A few months after that, Carl's book was finally published. Simon was present at the launch event and met Agnes. In his opening speech, Carl gave special thanks to two people, Agnes and Sonia. Simon then came to see Sonia and Carl's baby and attended a family event. Awkwardly, Simon also tried to hold the baby, and soon after they all gathered for a family photo.